The Smash community has a problem. Well, actually, the Smash community has lots of problems, but there's one problem that's become very relevant within the past few days. That problem being the harassment and toxicity towards players of the game's most controversial character, Steve. Now, let me be clear, this is a very complicated and touchy subject, so I'm going to approach this subject with the sensitivity and care it deserves. Real people are facing real harassment, and it's incredibly important that, above all else, our conversations about these topics don't make that worse or spread harassment toward anyone. I'm going to showcase lots of tweets from a lot of people today, and I want to make it 100% clear that I do not and will never condone harassment of any kind. If you partake in harassment of Steve players or anyone else, then do me a favor and never watch me again, because you're not welcome here. And before we begin, I do have one more disclaimer that I want to give. That's more of an overarching topic that I want to bring up in regards to the Smash community having seemingly so many issues. A lot of times I see people outside the Smash community criticize it for being one of the most problematic communities in gaming. It's no secret that many top Smash players have been outed in the past for being bad people, either towards children, or towards women, or towards people in general, and many people have equated these issues with the Smash community. But I want to make something very clear to those of you who may not be involved with the community itself. These issues are not unique to the Smash community. Go to any gaming community on Earth and you'll find groomers, and you'll find harassment, and you'll find toxicity. These are not Smash-only issues. The reason that these issues seem to be so prevalent in the Smash community is not because we have more bad apples than other communities, but because the Smash community is trying to expose as many of these people as possible to get them out of the community. The reason it seems so common here is because we as a community are trying really hard to get this behavior exposed and these bad people expelled from our scene. And in order to do that, these issues have to be brought to the limelight in front of everyone, and that deserves some props. If there is no other takeaway from this video, I want the community to know that I am extremely proud of all of us for trying to start a dialogue about important issues like this, and never stopping our work to try and make this game scene a lot better and a safer place for everyone. These are extremely important conversations to have, and even when we're wrong about some things, as I've certainly been in the past before, then we are at least furthering a very important dialogue, and that will always be a good thing. Now, the preamble for today's video has been completed. With the disclaimers out of the way, let's begin with the actual topic for today. Recently, a lot of drama went down in regards to Steve and the harassment that Steve players face on a daily basis. A lot happened in a pretty short time frame, and I don't want this video to turn into a 20-minute rant session, so I'm going to split this video into 3 parts so that the information can be accurately and concisely delivered to you. The first part of this video will just be me saying what happened. This will be just objective facts as to what happened and who was involved. The second part of this video will be me going over my thoughts on what happened. This section of the video will be strictly my opinion about the issue, and reasonable people will disagree, so it won't be a universal opinion that everyone is going to agree with, and that's okay. That's a part of discourse. The third and final part of this video will be me giving some advice to you, the viewers, as to how you can help avoid the vicious cycle of Twitter discourse that so often leads to players getting harassed unjustly. With that out of the way, let's begin with part 1, the facts of the case. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be showing lots of tweets from a lot of people, and while I will be showing them on the screen, if you want to see any of these tweets for yourself, I will link every tweet or thread that I use in this video in the description below, so go there if you want to do a little more digging yourself. This whole thing started when Ether from EtherRank posted a screenshot of a Reddit thread that was talking about the recent streams that Acola, the #1 ranked player in the world and a Steve main, had done. The comments were showing concern about harassment that Acola was receiving from the Japanese Smash scene, and how they had caused him to do things like lose motivation and shut down stream early. Ether's tweet was a very basic statement of, top players are just people, don't harass Steve mains. And while this caused a little bit of discourse and concern for Acola, it wasn't anything major. That was until Smax quote retweeted Ether's post, agreeing with Ether's sentiment, but more importantly calling out top players for not being able to separate character hate from player hate, according to Smax. With this tweet, Smax released multiple screenshots from top players, namely Spargo, Hungrybox, and Dark Wizzy. The tweets from Spargo and Hungrybox weren't as big of a deal, with Spargo's tweet merely saying F Steve and F Steve apologists, and Hungrybox's tweet containing a section about knowing when a player is carried by his character or not. However, it was Dark Wizzy's tweets that got everyone talking. This is because, unlike Spargo and HBox's tweets, Dark Wizzy's tweets came from a private Twitter account that Smax had access to, and these tweets were a lot more hateful in tone and intention. Now, it is important to note that Smacks tweeted later about how they wish they had separated Wizzy's tweets from Spargo's and HBox's tweets, as they didn't want to imply that what Spargo and HBox had said were on the same level of what Wizzy said. But the damage had been done already, and this tweet from Smacks blew up. Wizzy's tweets included things like saying Steve players should all burn, that their player base is pathetic, and that Acola is carried. It is important to note that these tweets were never meant to go public outside of Wizzy's private Twitter, but Smacks leaked them with their own tweet. This caused a lot of controversy, as the main debate around this tweet was whether or not it was okay for A, Wizzy to say these things in a setting they thought was private, and for B, Smacks to leak these tweets to the public when they were never supposed to be public in the first place. This situation, while not the main focus of the general discourse, was definitely one of the biggest sources of controversy within this drama. But what came of all of this? Well, Spargo released a statement about it, apologizing for what he said, recognizing that even though his comment was fairly tame, it still contributed towards a general attitude of hate and spitefulness towards Steve players, and for that, Spargo apologized. Some people think this was very mature of Spargo, although others think it was dumb he apologized at all for something they consider to be not a big deal. Hungrybox also released a statement, but instead of an apology, HBox defended their actions and made it clear that they've never condoned player harassment and, as they claim, have always kept character hate and player hate separate. For their part, HBox also released their own video covering the situation, the third they've made total covering harassment of Steve players, as they've made one in the past about the harassment that Onan has faced, and one covering when Acola was reportedly flipped off after winning Super Smash Con 2023. And lastly, Dark Wizzy released an apology for their words, saying that even though it was their private that was leaked, Wizzy recognized that what they said was bad. Wizzy apologized to Acola and Onan, made it clear that they didn't wish harm on anyone, and guaranteed that they would apologize to both players in person at the next time they were able to. Now, the biggest effect of all of this was the wave of people decrying harassment of Steve players, but also more and more people decrying Steve's ban on a tournament level. Zomba in the past has already said that they refuse to attend any tournament where Steve is banned, but Zomba was now joined by a new player sharing this stance, Mia. Mia released a statement after all this went down, stating that they would not attend any tournament with Steve banned unless there was a really good deal. People are debating how important this will really be, but it is worth noting that right now, the #1 player Acola and debatably #2 player Mia both do not attend any event that has Steve banned. And as Japan is the most dominant and most important region in the world right now, this has major implications for a global ranking system and the expanding gap between Japan and the rest of the world. But that's a tad unrelated, and discourse for another day. For now, that finishes up the first part of our video, recapping the bare facts of what exactly happened as objectively as possible. It's now time for us to head into the second part of today's video, where I go over my thoughts on everything I just covered. Let me start this segment by reiterating that I do not condone harassment of anyone. I think saying don't harass Steve mains is the most basic of basic takeaways from this entire situation, and if you disagree with that, I think you're a really messed up person with really messed up priorities about this children's party game. Now let's get into some more nitty-gritty details, most notably Smacks' post. Let's start off with the easy ones to go over, Spargo and HBox. Now let me start off by saying that I don't think what HBox or Spargo said is that bad, and Smacks would agree with that since they wish they had separated those tweets from what Wizzy said. I also don't think anyone would have been up in arms had HBox or Spargo just ignored this and not made any statement at all. I'm glad they did though, and let me go over why, since both of them kind of fall into the same category in reasoning. Lots of people don't think HBox and especially Spargo needed to apologize at all, and while I agree that they didn't need to, I'm glad that they did because of something that Spargo mentioned. Spargo and HBox are very influential figures in the community, and a lot of people listen to them and what they say. Like it or not, they are both influential voices in the community, and each and every word they speak has impact. It's a big responsibility. When a player releases a statement like F Steve and F Steve apologists, the first half of the tweet is absolutely fine. It's the second half that causes some problems, because it's fostering hatred towards people. It's a transition from saying this character is dumb to these people are dumb. And while this one tweet doesn't really do anything by itself, when almost every top player who is anti-Steve releases statements like this, it adds up. And it builds this narrative of us versus them, where Steve apologists are the enemy. It's fostering a rivalry and a divide within the community. This is what Spargo is actually apologizing for. Spargo's not apologizing for tweeting F Steve and F Steve apologists. Spargo's apologizing for contributing to and helping foster this us versus them narrative that harassment can stem from. The fact that someone as young as Spargo recognized this and promised to do better is actually very mature. All Spargo wanted to do with this apology was say that they were done spreading hatred and negativity, and instead Spargo wants to make the community a happier and more positive place. That is a good thing, and I'm glad someone as influential as Spargo used their platform to state that they don't condone harassment and will try their best to spread positivity. Spargo didn't have to apologize, but I'm glad they did, because ultimately I think this exact sentiment will be the thing that can help heal and fix the Smash community's current issues. Now, in terms of HBox released a video about this situation. I watched the video at length, and HBox basically said that they've never condoned harassment and always tries their best to separate character hate and player hate. HBox also talked a lot about how they feel like they've felt this kind of thing before, being a Puff player in Melee. HBox also gave an interesting angle on this situation, telling his audience that if they see anyone harassing Steve players, to call it out and not just let it slide. I actually like this, as it's encouraging the community to work together to squash this harassment, but it definitely has the potential to be used as an excuse for even more harassment, completing a vicious cycle of hatred, which I don't like. I also wish HBox acknowledged the attitude of hate and negativity that Spargo talked about in their response, but all in all this isn't a bad response, and I will give HBox credit for continuously bringing light to and decrying harassment of Steve players. But now let's talk about the elephant in the room, Dark Wizzy. Dark Wizzy's response is as good as it could possibly be. A lot of people view this situation in black and white, where you either support Smacks leaking the private Twitter, or you support Dark Wizzy's right to a private venting space. However, life isn't black and white, and me personally, my opinion lies somewhere in the middle. When it comes to Dark Wizzy, I think that the things said were out of line, but I also recognize that these things were said in confidence and are almost definitely hyperbolic, with Wizzy probably exaggerating the anger because Wizzy was just trying to blow off steam from a rough loss. However, I also think that Smack should not have leaked Wizzy's private Twitter, especially since many of these things were said months ago. If Smacks had really wanted to reveal all of this because they felt it was some great evil that needed to be exposed, why wait for so long? It feels like there was definitely a situation where Smacks saw an opportunity to create some buzz, and even if their intentions for that were good, Smacks has also kind of ruined their trustworthiness with this when it comes to people trusting them with information or access to private Twitters. I personally don't believe Wizzy should be cancelled or anything, not for something like this, and I believe in second chances for most people. I really like how Wizzy has said they'll apologize to both players in person. That's big to me. But why take it from me? As I'm writing this script, Acola had gone on stream and responded to what Wizzy had said. According to the translation, which may have some nuances that were lost, mind you, Acola says that they don't believe Wizzy really hates them. Acola then went on to say that they don't mind it and that if Wizzy is sorry, then Acola thinks it's fine. Acola finished off the statement by saying hating players is wrong, failure is a critical step forward, and the most important thing is how you feel now. All in all, a very mature take from Acola given the fact that he's a kid. Kinda like Spargo. What kind of a state is the community in if the most sensible and mature takes are coming from the minors? Anyways, I personally feel like if Acola is willing to forgive Wizzy and Wizzy becomes a better person, then that's the best outcome and no other punishment should be necessary. I'll also take this moment to say that nowhere on the internet is private. Private Twitters are a bad idea, and this is the prime example as to why. However, the most pressing issue for us now is the aftermath of all of this. The biggest thing being Mia saying they will not be going to any tournament that has Steve banned in the future. I think this is the most relevant development in the Steve ban argument in months. I mean, we're talking about number one, and in my opinion, number two in the world not being able to attend events that ban Steve, not to mention other players like Zomba who already do this. And a new development, as I'm writing this script, LumiRank announced that Steve banned events will count for the rankings the same amount as Steve legal events. However, upon this announcement, EtherRank made an announcement that in 2024, Steve banned events will not be eligible for EtherRank. Now, we're getting into a rankings debate, something I've purposefully avoided for a long time. This is mostly because I really don't have any knowledge in ranking systems, and it's a messy debate through and through. But the one thing that is absolutely clear is that this one singular character is dividing the game's community harder than I've ever seen it be divided before. If more Japanese top talent unites along with top NA or European talent that are anti-ban to boycott Steve banned events, then there is a genuine possibility of tournaments being forced to unban Steve or risk not being counted for either rankings or not reaching enough points to be counted as a major because top players are boycotting it. LumiRank stated that they're going to revisit their decision later on in the year, and if LumiRank decides to not count Steve banned events like EtherRank has, then that will be the final nail in the coffin for the Steve ban movement. We'll have to see if those efforts bear fruit or not. I will merely end this segment with this thought. If I have to pick between banning Steve or seeing this continued harassment and abuse of minors because they play Steve, then I will value the safety and health of these players first and foremost. I'd rather see a safe community with a broken top tier than a dangerous harassment-filled community with a slightly easier game. Now it's time for us to take a moment for the final segment of this video. What can you do to help stop this harassment? This segment will be the shortest, but it might be the most important. In order to stop this harassment, I think the main thing will be to focus on our language. I'm mostly going off of things that Spargo said, because I think a lot of people can really take their words to heart. Many people rush statements in the anti-ban or pro-ban argument, and this rushing can lead to sloppy wording. Using Spargo's tweet as an example, saying F Steve is fine, but the fact that the F Steve apologists was included is reinforcing a hateful rhetoric towards a real group of people. A lot of this is backed up by the C word, carried. One thing I haven't brought up yet is the fact that the entire reason this whole thing started was, as I mentioned earlier, Acola getting harassed on stream. What I didn't mention was what bothered Acola so much. It was people discrediting Acola's success by calling him carried. We saw this in HBox's tweet that Smacks highlighted, but the sentiment that Steve players are carried is perhaps the one thing that reinforces and builds hatred towards Steve players. Let me get one thing out of the way right now. Acola, Onin, Big Chungus, DD, DJ Don, Radacious, Jake, Riku, and others are not purely carried by Steve. Every single person has access to the same exact character select screen that they do. As an example, Cola didn't used to play Roy, and picked him up to prove that Roy was a stupid easy character to win with. And what happened? Cola became top 10 in the world at their peak with that character. There is absolutely nothing preventing other players from doing that but with Steve, but they don't. Because Steve does take work, and more importantly, defeating other real players at any level of play requires at least some fundamentals and skill in the game. I personally don't think any player in the entire game is carried. Acola and Onin are as good as they are because they worked hard to get there. To imply that Acola or Onin's success is purely based off of their character is frankly ignorant. And this rhetoric, this idea that Steve players are purely carried by their character is one of the largest things contributing to this harassment. Let me be clear. Complain about Steve all you want. That's fine. But the moment you imply that a player is carried by Steve, then you're starting to enforce a hateful idea that, with enough of it, will lead to hate and harassment. After all, if this player really is carried, then they don't deserve to win. They don't deserve their head-to-heads. They don't deserve their placements. They don't deserve their tournament winnings. They don't deserve any of it because they're carried. This is the crucial idea that leads to harassment, in my opinion. And the one thing that I want people to start doing is getting rid of this carried sentiment. And it's extremely easy. If you want to hate on Steve, go for it. But focus on the character. What a lot of people don't realize is that keeping conversation on the character and not the player includes talk of being carried. Talking about the Steve Prodigy who made top 8 at a major despite never being heard of before joke is contributing toward this hatred. Saying things like how do players lose with this character contributes toward this hatred. Tweeting things like I can't believe blank made top 8, he's so bad, carried by Steve, will directly result in harassment of players, usually minors. If we want to start targeting hatred and getting rid of the harassment and toxicity that has plagued this community for so long, this is where we start. For now, I'll end with this. Be nice to one another. At the end of the day, it's just a game. No one deserves to be harassed over a game, especially kids. We all have to work together to make this community a safe space for everyone who wants to enjoy it, no matter who they pick on the character select screen. At the end of the day, it's just a game. A game. Game for gaming. That's going to be it for today's video. Before I go, shout out to my patrons Seth Lasser and FarsGold333, and my YouTube members Stormtrooper, Loco Soco, Mattoon, Ropoke, Javo, DTR Jr., Defective, and my tier 2 members Mike G and Eddie K. Tomorrow, I'll be covering Claro Gaming from the Dominican Republic, but until then, I've been Mr. Mice, and thank you all so much for watching.